Hey, good afternoon everyone. So on the last video I had mentioned that I wanted to kind of take my channel a little bit of a different direction. So one of the things that I'm going to be doing a bit more of is talking a bit with you guys about plants. Yes, it is very warm in here, so I apologize, I'm in a tank top. It is 27 degrees inside my RV and it is 24 degrees outside. So I'm in a tank top, I'm staying cool, I've got my windows open and a nice cross breeze happening between my two windows. Anyways, one of the things that I wanted to talk a bit about with you guys are plants. Now, a lot of people wonder if they can actually grow plants in their RV or their van. Of course, this is going to depend on your climate, where you're located. However, it is entirely possible to grow plants in your vehicle that you are residing in. In my van, I did have plants on a fairly regular basis. However, they usually did not survive the winters. So I usually did end up losing them over the winter and I had to replace them in spring. Usually not a huge investment to buy new plants in spring. Often you can get various ones on sale, things like that. So anyways, we're going to get to today's video. So what we're going to talk about today is orchids. Now, one of the things that I know a lot of people have concerns about is they buy an orchid and the blooms are beautiful, everything is beautiful, then the bloom fades, leaves start to fall off, and it dies. And a lot of people are wondering, like, is it something I'm doing wrong? Am I watering it wrong? Watering it too much? Not enough? The biggest issue when you buy orchids, so most of the time they come in these little pots like this, okay? And inside, so I've already taken this orchid apart and I'm going to be transplanting it, but we're going to go through all that step by step together, okay? So this is the plant after what I've done is I've taken it out of the pot and there is all of this, okay? This is all moss that you see in my hand, okay? Now, when they plant these are little babies and that moss is helpful to develop all of these what are considered roots on the orchid, okay? That moss helps get those developed, helps get them started. However, once your orchid is starting to get a little bit bigger, all that moss does is suffocate these roots that have grown in here, okay? And it soaks up the moisture. It basically sits in this core, in this middle, around all of these. They have no way to get out, they have no way to grab air, and they have no way to actually like function the way that they're supposed to function. So I'll show you this one close up. You can look at this one here, okay? And I don't know if you can see that very good, how it's all cracked around it. So basically what has happened is this one root, and these aren't the same as all roots on plants, and we're going to go over that in a minute, but this one root has rotted away. It's been overly, it's been sitting in moisture too much. It was probably like wrapped in that moss, and that's what happened to it, okay? Now we have this root here. I'll show you this one. That's a nice healthy root, okay? So when you get one of these, after it's done its bloom, you want to wait till the bloom is completed. Now don't cut this off, this bloom. Let it die all the way back until it's totally brown. I know it doesn't look appealing, but you don't want to cut it off when it's green. You want to let it die all the way back down. It basically puts the energy back into the base of the plant is what happens, okay? Once it has, at this point I can cut it off, but once it has brought all this energy back in, the entire thing is brown, then you can cut it off, okay? So this is a little one that I had. It was in this pot, and I am actually transplanting it in this one, okay? So you can see the size difference here. I'm taking it from this little thing to this one, okay? Now, the other thing that you need to know, when they sell those, they're in those moss pods for a reason. It's to create that root growth. But In order for your orchid to become big and healthy and continue growing and be a thriving plant, you actually want to put it into an orchid mix, okay? Now, an orchid mix is usually a mixture of bark, okay? So you're gonna have pieces of bark in there. And then, I don't know if you can see all that little white stuff, okay? That's called perlite. It needs those two things for a specific reason. Now, an orchid, the reason that the roots are different with the orchid is these actually absorb moisture from the air. So if they're sitting in actual water, they will rot and they will die and it'll kill your orchid. However, by placing it into something like this mixture with all these big chunks of bark, okay, by putting it in something like that, you can water it. The water is going to trickle through all that bark. It's going to moisturize the bark, settle at the bottom of all that bark, but then it's going to slowly keep evaporating up through the bark. That evaporation is basically the air that's in between all those pieces of bark. There's water in that air. That's how these roots are going to absorb that moisture. They're not going to absorb it by sitting it in any kind of water. That's why a lot of times when you see orchids growing in the wild, they're growing on a big fallen tree or a log or somewhere where there's like big chunks of bark that have fallen in the forest. That's why you're going to see them growing in places like that. You're not going to naturally see them growing in most cases. There are some that will grow in more of a mossy, soily mixture, but most cases they're going to be growing in and around fallen trees or rotting bark or something like that, where there's air that's consistently moving, human air moving around that environment, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to actually clip off any of these ones that are all rotted like this, and actually you can even just pull it off, okay? And so you can see that's what came off of it, okay? And you see what's left is this root. Now you can leave that. Sometimes those will grow back, but I personally like to actually cut them right off and let the healthy ones take over, because trying to like get this one to come back as healthy as this one is very difficult and it's very challenging. However, if I have this one, and you can see right here, it's quite dry right now, but you see this right here, this is going to be another root that's going to come up. Now it's probably going to end up growing above the bark or over the bark, and that is very normal with orchids, for the roots to be your bark surface level to be here and the roots to come up and over and back in or around. That's very normal, and that's very healthy of them, because what they can do if they're like that, you'll have the ones that are holding it in, but then you're also going to have the ones that are collecting the humidity out of the air, which is great for your RV. Having something like this is going to pull that humidity out of the air and put it into the plant. Yes, you are going to get some humidity back with these leaves. They give off water just like any other plant, and we can go over that in another video, but you are going to get some humidity coming off the plant, but you're going to get a lot pulled out of your air through these types of roots. So I would definitely say, if there was a plant that you wanted to have in your vehicle that you're living in, and you do have a humidity issue, orchids are like probably your best friend. Because if they have those roots up in the air, they're going to be constantly pulling that moisture into the plant, developing those root systems, growing new leaves, sending up blooms, okay? So I am going to just show you a picture of what this looked like when I got it, when it was, you know, a baby in this little pot. And then I'll also post a picture of what it's going to look like when I transplant it. Now, basically, all I'm going to do when I transplant this, I'm going to remove all the roots that are dead or rotten. I'm simply going to make take out some of this bark, gently place my orchid in there. You don't want to be rough with it right now because it's going to have to adjust to this new environment, okay? So you just want to gently place it in there and then take that bark and put it back on and just kind of lightly pat. Okay guys, so I'm just in the process of transplanting it here. So you can see I have pulled out a bit of that bark mixture. And I have the base of the orchid kind of centralized in the pot right here. Now, just very carefully when you're transplanting it, try and almost like spider these out so they're all going different directions, okay? Now, I have trimmed off quite a bit of the ones that were over on this side, but that's okay. New ones are gonna form, okay? And I did cut off, I don't know if you can see it, the cut spot is right there, that little knob there. So that was actually where the previous bloom had been. So I've cut that off as well. So basically now all I'm going to do is take what I took out, that, and I'm just going to place it on top of here. Now, an important thing to know when you buy this, and it says it on the bag, it's on the directions, but you want to actually soak this bark mixture for 24 hours before you actually do your transplant, okay? So it needs to be well soaked, nice and moist, so that when you place your orchid in here, it's immediately getting hydrated and getting that nice, cool, fresh air going up through those roots that are there, okay? So that's kind of where we're at now with that. And I will, however, if I can, I will maybe include in a future video, I would say probably about 4 to 6 weeks from now, I'll maybe put a clip in there of how it's looking. Now, I may have additional leaves on it, and I may even have new blooms. So I will give you a little bit of an update of how my orchid has come in about 4 to 6 weeks. That's about how long it takes for it to recoup, develop new roots, and potentially send out new leaves and new flowers, okay? So I hope this video was helpful to everybody, and I hope that if you have any questions or comments, you can leave them down below, and I will try to answer them as best I can. Thanks a lot, guys. Talk to you soon. Give you a picture of how that was planted when I got it and what it looks like when I transplant it. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments and I'll answer them the best I can. I'll also include a few links down below of some really good videos that show you about orchids, teach you about orchids, you know, with their blooming, with their leaves, how they grow, all that. So I will give a few other videos down below, which were videos that I used as resources when I was learning about orchids. I do have a degree in biology, and it is plant biology, and that has always kind of been my passion. So yes, I love plants. They are one of my passions. So yeah, if you have any questions, like I said, leave them in the comments. Don't forget to hit that like button and the subscribe button, and stay tuned because we're going to have all kinds of really cool, informative videos just like this coming up. Keep on rolling with me, guys.